This is a spoiler discussion for the Fabelmans. If you have not seen the Fabelmans and you don't want to be spoiled, you should not be listening to this. If you have seen the movie or you don't care about spoilers, then listen on. We should also say, if you've come across this video via YouTube, this is the spoiler discussion. If you'd like to hear the main review discussion, check out the full episode of the podcast at the link in the description. Kyle, what do we need to spoil about the Fabelmans? I mean, this is a very basic coming of age drama.
Yeah, I mean, this movie reveals why his movies deal with his parents splitting up. We see divorce on his movies. We've seen anti-Semitism in his movies. And we also now know his origin story for his fear of dinosaurs, thanks to the Fabelmans.
Sure. Absolutely. I think that's what he wants you to walk away from the movie with.
Right. I mean, at the end, when that T-Rex was awoken from the lava pit and ate his whole family, like, oh, okay, well, that's why he made that movie. That makes sense. He's just exercising demons through Jurassic Park.
Yeah, for a movie as subtle as this one with most of its themes, I thought that one was a little jerky.
Yeah, like, I went to Wikipedia and his family was not eaten by T-Rexes. That's a fabrication of this movie.
Oh,
so,
well, maybe that's why he didn't call it the Spielbergs.
No, I mean, okay, so there's the main thing to spoil is what incites the divorce between the parents.
Sure.
Right, and that is this Seth Rogen character who is a friend of the family. The father describes him as his best friends. They're colleagues also. They're both kind of within the engineering world. But we see through film how close the mother, Michelle Williams, and the Seth Rogen character are. And like we're not just like talking close, but like holding hands and sort of sneaking away close.
Sure.
And also, we throughout the movie, for the first move when they go from like New Jersey to Phoenix, the family takes Seth Rogen with them. Basically, like, you know, Paul Dano's character is able to get him a job at wherever they're working in Phoenix. And then when he moves to California to work for IBM, Seth Rogen is not offered a job. They kind of leave Seth Rogen behind. And that seems to really start the depression of the mother, where, you know.
Yeah.
This
I also found it interesting too that when they made the first move, he doesn't think he needs to bring the guy with him when they're moving to Arizona.
It's her
New Jersey.
idea.
It's her idea.
Yeah, and she's like,
and he literally says, "I don't need to bring him here. He can make his own name here in New Jersey." Blah blah blah. And she's like, she kind of guilt trips him by saying, "He's your best friend. You know, this is a good opportunity for you. Why can't it be a good opportunity for him
you guys
too?
Work together. You're a team."
Right. Those types of things. And I think at that point in time, he's not fully understanding why she wants to bring him. Right.
And I don't think either are we as an audience. Like, I didn't pick up at that point that there was something else going on.
They haven't really given us any clues towards that end either. But by the time they make the move from Arizona to California, they've already kind of tipped the hand that there's this extramarital relationship between the friend character and the mother character. And now when she says, bring him, Paul Dano, I think when he says, I don't need him, is saying it more about his relationship with his wife than he's saying it about the career. He's saying we can move to California and be happy without him in our life. I think he has an inkling of what's going on. Maybe he doesn't know the full extent, but that there's some kind of emotional relationship going on between the two. And this is his opportunity to separate them on some level, even if unconsciously. And so when he gets to California and she becomes very depressed and he can't deal with it, like not necessarily he's over it, just he doesn't know how
to help her.
He doesn't have the emotional capacity to figure this out, how to help her. And he doesn't realize that he probably never will. He's just grasping at any way to make her happy. Then I think he realizes that he does need the friend on some level if he was going to keep his marriage together. I think if he had moved the friend out to California with him, the wife would have had her extra thing. And if Paul Dano could have handled that, they could have stayed married.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that's an ideal situation or that he should have to do that or, you know what I mean? Any of those things. But that's the reality of like, she probably would have stayed with him if the Seth Rogen character was still around.
Because you get the impression that her relationship with Seth Rogen is much more of emotional relationship.
Right.
Like, I doubt there's anything physical much going on besides like hand holding.
I mean, there may have been much more than that. They don't depict it in the movie.
But doesn't she say at one point, like, what? So Sammy, he figures it out, and he figures it out by watching these tapes of this camping trip that they took with the friends. And in the background, he sees the mother and the friend talking and sitting on a stump and briefly holding hands. And he kind of, it's almost like the Zapruder tapes at times. He's like, rewinding, is like back into the left, you know,
for sure,
going back and forth.
Yeah.
I thought that was a little like
hat on, hat off.
You're
hat
right.
On,
yeah.
off. Yeah.
Hands together, hands apart, hands together. So, yeah. So he kind of
and the mother does say it never went beyond those things.
We never took it as far as we could have, is what she says.
Right.
Now, still, like, emotionally cheating is still cheating, because I think
Agreed.
a big part of a marriage is that emotional connection.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start having an emotional connection with someone else, right, then you start neglecting your partner and your family, because you're no longer getting that emotional fulfillment from them. You're getting it from this new person, whether there's physical things happening or not.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm not suggesting they have an open marriage, and certainly in the 1950s, early 60s, that was not a thing. So.
You know, maybe Michelle Williams' character would be open to it, but there's no way Paul Dano's be like, that's fine. Let me go work for IBM, and you can go hang out with my friend all day.
He was pretty straight-laced about things, I would say. But I do find it interesting that she seemed to have a genuine love for him.
Oh, yeah.
The Paul Dano character. And didn't want to hurt him. You know what I mean? It didn't seem like an acting out, or that she was even upset that he couldn't satisfy these other needs. I think she had a very good read on who he was and what he could provide her. And she tried to mitigate that on some level over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And then once he took her to California, it was too late. Like, he removed all of her mitigation methods. And she was not having it, I would say. And like, over time.
They briefly mentioned that Paul Dano's character did serve in World War II.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like you imagine that he was a soldier. He was fighting World War II. And it would, like, that common thing of like, you get home and you're going to marry a girl and start a family. And marriage in the 40s and 50s and relationships are handled much differently than we handle them now, of looking for connection. It was much more transactional.
Sure.
In that era. So, maybe she was like, okay, well, you're right. He's smart and he's a nice person. And
those are all things she even said in the movie.
Yeah, right.
Those were reasons. Those are reasons to like him.
Right.
And she didn't really have many vocal complaints over the course of the movie about him, other than he didn't have the thing that Seth Rogen has. You know what I mean? Well, like, in vague generalities.
Like, he's passionless.
Right.
Right. He's not a funny person.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And like Seth Rogen's character may not be as smart as Paul Dano's character, but also seems to be more of a well-rounded personality.
I think he's just a warm person compared to the Paul Dano character. Like, I'm sure this was intentional. There's two scenes in this movie where the main character, the young kid, Sammy, gets hugged by there was one scene where he hugs his father, and his father, it looks like he does not know how to hug.
Yeah, kind of like awkward about the whole thing. Yep.
Right. And then later on, he's hugged by the Seth Rogen character, and that's a guy that knows how to give a hug.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I think that's the difference between those two men in the movie. And in one, he wants the hug from his father, he goes and gets it from his father, even if his father didn't want to give it to him.
Mm-hmm.
And in the other, he's getting it from a guy he doesn't want to get it from. And I thought all of those things were just interesting from like a, I don't know, interpersonal relationship dynamics type thing. And I'd never seen that in a family drama presented that way in such non-confrontational, non-sensationalized way. You know what I mean? It's like, I think Marriage Story, we'll get into the divorce movies.
Oh yeah.
But Marriage Story does a good job of this. But when I think of like War of the Roses or like other depictions of divorce, there's not much subtlety to most of them. It's just fighting, and it's good acting. It's fun to watch, but it's, not real.
But Marriage Story also has some pretty confrontational moments too.
It does, but they're all, in my opinion, grounded in what you could perceive as a reality.
Yes.
They're not heightened. They feel earned to me, but we'll get into that.
We'll get into that. Or I should say, we got into that already.
Sure. But yeah, so the big, I would say the double-sided twist in quotes in this movie is, one, it's about his parents' divorce,
right,
for the most part. It's halfway about how he got into movies and how that relates to his family dynamics and how that relates to his early years in high school, I would say. And then the second part of that twist, and this is the part I believe is made up, is that he's the one that exposed or he's the one that figured out that his mom was doing this by accidentally capturing things on film.
Right, yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's not true.
I'm sure we could look at Wikipedia to find out, but I don't know if that was... I doubt he like had these tapes and watched them and was able to catch his mom and his friend or their friend, having these secret moments in the background.
Intimate moments.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So before we get to the final conversation, we didn't really talk much about some of the bullying. Like, that felt very Sandlot-y to me.
Yeah. So it did, right? Like it kind of felt like an 80s movie where you have like this bully who's just a jerk for the sake of being a jerk. Like you've got the popular kid, and he seemed like, oh, I'm just going to be a jerk for the sake of being a jerk. And you've got like his kind of buddy who's super anti-Semitic and who's probably got some other issues going on. And like that character almost seemed more real to me. Of like, okay, you're just like a mentally disturbed a-hole.
Sure.
Who probably comes from a fan, I'm sure your dad's probably the same way. So yeah, like I didn't find the jock bully that believable. He felt like just like a movie trope. But I love the scene after they watch the beach video. And this beach video kind of like, so Sammy makes this, he like films senior skip day, and he makes a video of the day, and like it has all these sort of lionizing shots of this bully, this jock, being the best
makes
at
him
running.
look really good.
Makes him look really good, right? And you see the jock get super uncomfortable with it. And then later he, like in the hallway, he confronts Sammy about it. And you can tell like he's mad at him for exposing his insecurities and wanting to know like why he did it to him. Why you do this to me? And then Sammy's just kind of like, I just put on film what I saw. Like I wasn't trying to hit a nerve, but obviously it hit a nerve with this guy. But at the same time, he almost like ends up respecting it. It was such an interesting turn for like, what was this minor bully character had this huge growth in like this overnight. And I thought that was incredibly interesting to see sort of his insecurities put on screen. Him end up respecting Sammy for it, but then also Sammy realizing like, oh man, like film is super powerful, right? If I can elicit these responses from people.
I definitely think that was part of the message in that moment. I also thought maybe there might have been a little bit of an undercurrent of like, this is what films do. They pick a hero and they present a hero as a hero. even if the person is not a hero in real life.
Right. Yep.
You know what I mean? He like at one point, I forget the exact line, but he says something like, that's the job, or that's what the story needed.
Mhm.
It needed a hero. So I made you the hero.
Right. Yeah. Because the bully's like, I'm such a jerk to you all the time. Why did you make
Right.
me a hero? And right. Yeah.
And he said, I wish I could remember the exact line, but he says something to the tune of
It's
like,
something like that.
it doesn't matter who you are.
Hero. Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't matter who you are in real life. It matters that the story needed a hero.
Yep.
So I made you the hero.
So yeah, I thought that was a great sequence. That whole prom was, I thought, really well done.
Yeah. I'm really glad the girlfriend character was in there because she was great and seemed disturbingly weird, but also one of the most grounded teenagers I've seen, like at the same time. Like she seemed to, all the Christ stuff was way over the top. And
right.
yet that girl knew who she was for better or for worse and knew what she wanted.
Yep.
From boys and had no insecurity about any of those things, even if they were weird.
I thought she was a great character. I saw this with my wife, and that was by far her favorite character in the movie too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, or should we talk about the John Ford conversation?
Okay. The girlfriend is my favorite fictional character was the girlfriend.
Sure.
My favorite moment, which I think has got to be nearly everyone's favorite moment of that movie, has to be the John Ford scene at the end.
Yeah. I mean, that scene is so good. I kind of wish there was a sequel to this and we get Steven Spielberg's weird early Hollywood interactions with people.
Right. Like his stories of just, I met this guy one time and
I just want a Fabelmans 2 where it's like the next 5 years of Steven Spielberg's life.
Like his early days in Hollywood.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen the movie, he gets a job or he's interviewing for a job at a Hollywood studio. He's moved from
CBS.
Oh, it's CBS, whatever.
Yeah.
He's moved from Northern California to Southern California, or at least he's down there anyway.
Yep.
And the guy he's interviewing with says, hey, if you want to be a director, I need to take you across the street and I'll take you to a director who you will definitely have heard of, and I'll make an introduction. And so the Sammy character goes over there, and the person he's being introduced to turns out to be John Ford.
Who has a great entrance. Like Sammy's is kind of dropped off in the waiting room.
Right. And who is John Ford for people who might not know?
John Ford is a famous Western director, Stagecoach, The Searchers, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. He
made a lot of John Wayne movies.
A lot of John Wayne
Westerns.
movies. Yep. He famously got into fights with his cast, and there was punching matches. Like he seemed like a very combative director.
He's a rough and tumble guy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep. For sure. So, but also a legend, I would say, far as directors go.
He made John Wayne a star.
Right.
If you watch Stagecoach, there's this, like the first time you see the John Wayne character, he's framed like a biblical figure, like with this halo and the lighting. And right there, John Ford is like, I just made you a star with that shot. John Ford is also incredibly confident of who he was as a director.
Right. So in this scene, John Ford is played by David Lynch.
Which I did not pick up in the moment, but
didn't?
No. Well, I mean, I think I was just I was so in the moment of that scene, I wasn't trying to figure out, who is that really?
Sure. Well, David Lynch is older now, and he used to be thicker, I would say.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he has a thinner face than probably you remember. So I could see not completely recognizing.
And
him.
He's got
I think it was a cadence that gave it away.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But the voice should have been the giveaway.
Right. So it's a really awkward conversation where John Ford is giving him advice, and it's a great scene. It's awesome.
It's such simple advice though. Like,
sure.
It's like, that looks good. Everything else looks like crap. Get out of my office.
Right. Well, I think the advice he's giving him, while simple, has value. Don't look at the scene as, how do I represent what's happening in the scene?
Yeah.
Think of it as, how do I make it look cool?
No, I'm not saying it's invaluable advice,
Right.
but it's very like, keep this in mind, keep this in mind. That's my
Get
two
out of my
cents for you.
office.
Get out of my
Yeah.
office. Yeah.
Yeah. It was great though, for sure.
Yeah.
The other scene we didn't talk about that I loved as well was the uncle. When the uncle shows up, you remember that? The Jewish uncle who's
Yep.
like a little
Judd Hirsch.
scary. Yeah.
Right.
He's a little scary in this movie. It was pretty great.
Because he's a bit of a wild card.
Right.
Right. And then you kind of learn that he is sort of like Sammy, like the mom. He's the artist of the family.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. He joined the circus and went off to make movies and,
Mm-hmm.
kind of talks to Sammy about like, you can have your family, but you'll always be an artist. And that's always going to pull you away.
Right. Yeah. That you'll never be. He basically tells him, you're going to have to sacrifice a piece of your family if you want to be an artist.
Right. You're not going to be happy to stay.
Right. A relationship or something like that.
Yep.
And that's pretty much exactly what the mother does later on. And maybe something that Steven Spielberg did over time. I don't know later on in life if he stopped talking to his parents or I have no clue where the story goes from here. Probably should read some Steven Spielberg biopic books or something like that. I'm sure they're out there.
I want to say his mom died. One of his parents died recently, like in the last 5 years. And one of his parents died a while back.
Well, someone had a good run then.
But he also like was, Spielberg himself got divorced in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. Make a movie about that, Steven.
He did. It's called Temple of Doom. Not joking. It's called Temple of Doom.
I know.
Okay.
All right. Anything else for the Fabelmans?
No, I don't know. I wish I had my movie nerd hat on when I was watching this. I think maybe I was having my Spielberg, cinema spectacle hat on and just wasn't picking up on some of these themes that make much more sense now we've talked about it.
Sure. Have you seen this movie enough or will you ever revisit it?
I don't know if I'd revisit this movie.
Okay.
It's probably worth a revisit. Like I don't think I'm sure I'll get new things out of it. I just don't know if I need to revisit, to be completely honest.
Gotcha. I'll probably give it one more watch in my lifetime at some point. I'm sure I'll do a Spielberg rewatch completely from one side to the other at some point. But for now, I think I'm probably good too.
Yeah.
I got most of what's there. All right. Thanks for listening or watching. We'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye.